Hi, everyone. Welcome to Ghost Talk. I'm Harold St. John, one of the founders of Toledo Iowa Ghost Hunter Society, with my partner, Butch.
Good evening.
We have Dan with us tonight. Carmen.
Hello.
As always, Becky. And our special
Hi.
guest, Jeff from Outcast Paranormal.
And I just want to say I'm not playing on my phone. I'm going to be watching the comments tonight.
If you get a chance, maybe chime in somewhere and say hello. Let us know you're watching, okay? Jeff, thanks for coming out tonight.
You're welcome.
I'm glad that you're here. Tonight I want to talk about a case that we have been working on for a couple of years, and we're going to get to that in a second. I want to give a shout out to both of my sons for a minute. My youngest son moved to Houston a couple of weeks ago. My oldest son is moving to Atlanta, Georgia, first thing in the morning. We're taking the grandkids. And Becky and I have been camping with Uncle Jeff down in Mohican, doing another investigation down at the Mohican Haunted Castle. We had a chance to sit down with Jimmy Landau, a great interview that you did. And we talked to Hannah, one of the employees there, and you sat down with Taylor, one of the managers at the end. One of the amazing couple of days it was too bad that Butch couldn't go, and I tried to get Jeff to go down to do some filming, but hey, Jeff, you were busy over the weekend with an investigation yourself, I think, with the group.
Yep.
But we had a great time. We visited the cemetery, the Hyde Cemetery again. But more importantly, it's going to be one of the stories that we're going to be talking about in the near future. And Jeff has promised to do a documentary video on that location as well. Am I right? Or
It's getting close. We still got a lot of filming to do, a lot of interviews and things like that, but we're getting there.
we had a busy.
Hopefully around Halloween time.
Good. We've had a busy week. We raced back in town, got in town this afternoon. Like I said, I went and seen my oldest boy and said goodbye to him for now. Got to spend some time with the grandchildren. So it's kind of a weird night, but I think Ghost Talk tonight was important. So we rushed back here we kind of put this out on a whim. So everybody's here tonight. Michelle's missing. So Michelle, if you watch this later, we miss you tonight. And I hope you watch anyways. So anyways, over the course of the last couple of years, more importantly, I want to talk about the hauntings and the investigation parts, but I want to tell you a little story. There was a grisly murder that happened in 1857 by a man by the name of returned Johnathan Meigs Ward out in Sylvania, Ohio on Main Street. He was married to Olive Ward. Olive Ward had 2 children previously from a previous marriage. Either way, Return and Olive were married. They didn't get along real well. Obviously, nobody did with Return. Return also had some big issues with Olive's 2 children. And I want to make this kind of brief as I can. It came a time where they had a big fight, and Olive had went to leave at the train station with Return. And at the time, they had an argument. Return took her trunk, didn't let her take it. I think and also took her bonnet. And Olive had escaped from this really foul, horrible relationship up to Adrian. Am I right, Becky?
Yeah.
Yeah, she went to Adrian. Anyway, some time had passed, and as an acquaintance of Return's, a gentleman that he knew, and you had said might have even been a family member. Am I right?
I believe so, yes.
Might have. But either way, when he had talked him to go up to Adrian to try to talk Olive into coming back home, Olive reluctantly agreed to come home as long as Return was going to pay for her to come back. Here's the thing, and I think we all know this. Olive knew when she was coming back to get the rest of her belongings. I don't think she had any intentions of ever staying with Return.
He was a jealous, abusive husband that wasn't good to her or her children.
Exactly.
They were always hurting for money too, and I think by having the stepchildren, he didn't like having to take care of them financially too. So that was
I think they were nothing more than a burden to him. Would you agree? Either way, she did come back. They had another large argument, and Return had stated to her that she was never going to leave. She would never leave that home again. So I think Return knew what he was going to do right from the get-go. But that night they had an argument, went to bed, and the very next morning, I think it was around 6 a.m. in the morning, Olive had gotten up and Return was ready for her to awaken. I think she was bending over to get her shoes on or or something, but she had her back to return. And he had picked up a flat iron and busted her skull with it, knocked her down, and I think it fractured her skull, and there's blood
Fractured
everywhere.
the top of her
Yeah,
skull.
some of it. And I don't want to get into any of the gruesome details, so maybe we should have said this right off the bat. On talking about this horrible murder, I guess there's some viewer discretion here, so if you don't want to hear this, then maybe tune out for about 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll get to the scary ghost story
It
part.
was actually Ohio's first serial killer,
Yes.
so it's gruesome.
Yeah,
Yes, because he didn't just kill Olive. He confessed to the murder of 2 other men in Ohio. That he
right.
robbed and killed.
Well, they found that out, later after.
Yeah, when he confessed.
Right. So either way, the bottom line is he murdered his wife, Olive, at the time. And right after the murder, it goes to show during the confessions that he had made what type of person he was. Right after murdering his wife, he had left to go buy a bag of sugar.
Well, he did that to make his cover story. He was telling his neighbors that his wife and him were going out of town, but they saw him moving around in there and foul smoke coming from the building. So he wasn't very good at it.
Right. Well, and so then he came home, I'm sure contemplating what he just did. And more importantly, how's he going to cover up this crime, and how's he going to get rid of the body?
In the middle of a neighborhood.
Yeah, right in the middle of Main Street.
It is dead center of town.
Right. Well, he lived right. Is it okay to get the location right this time? I think it is.
I think it's out there.
Yeah, I think we all know what we're talking about. It sits where Ace Hardware is in the paint section. It was a 16 by 20 wood framed house that they lived in at the time. Anyways, the murder had happened. He went out for a bag of sugar, come home, tried to plot how he was going to cover this murder up and get rid of the body. I think the easiest way for him to do was in his mind was to dismember her body and try to burn her up in the stove and get rid of the body parts. This is where it gets kind of gruesome. So he began to do that. I think one of the first things he said in his confession was he tore her clothes off, disrobed her, and opened her up and took the bowels out. And he had got a roaring fire going in the stove, and then put her bowels in there. Of course, they began to, expand and inflate. And he said in detail how he had to puncture them, and apparently some of the body fluids or whatever.
Well,
splashed on him.
we don't have to go into all the gross details, but the point is, what kind of person can do all of this that he had to do to get her body small enough to go in those old timey stoves?
Right.
It was
You know what I mean?
intricate
My
and
gosh.
surgical and over the course of days, so.
Yeah,
Well, here's
3 days.
Here's the sick thing. During the first couple of days of coming back to the home and dismembering more parts of her body, it spoke. The next was the liver, the heart, and so on and so forth. But he had went that night and spent the night, I think, at his sister's. Was it his sister's?
His
Sisters.
sister,
Sister.
It was his sister's daughter.
Yeah.
He stayed at, and I can't remember, I think her name was Mrs. Lewis. Stayed at her home that night, got up the next morning and had breakfast, and then returned home to continue to dismember his deceased wife, his murdered wife at the time. Worked all day doing that, trying to get rid of some of the larger parts of the body, the legs and arms, et cetera, et cetera. And then he went back and spent the night there again as if nothing happened. And when he came home that night, I guess he apparently got it down to, I think, just the skull, and he had put her head under the bed and went to bed that night. This is comfortable and as if nothing had happened at all. Got up the next morning, went out trying to find out, I guess, what the talk of the town was, if his wife was being missed. And lo and behold, at that time, people were starting to talk about the billowing smoke coming out of his chimney and a foul odor.
His suspect.
He was and the fact that he lied and said they were going out of town. You could see his head moving around in there.
Right,
above
they
the
had seen him
curtain.
doing work at his home, dirty work at best.
Right.
And he went back, I think, apparently that night, the third night, to try to stay with his sister's daughter's home again, and they refused him in that night because they even become suspects. So the bottom line is, this was a gruesome murder. It returned Johnathan Meigs Ward. It did the murder. The town became suspect. His home was searched. they didn't have enough evidence, I think, the first time.
Yeah, police came into his home,
Right.
couldn't find nothing.
Right, and the whole time he had body parts, I think in her trunk under the bed.
They still were some body parts in the
Right.
home.
Right, so, and they had come back a second time, and I think at that time had gotten enough evidence to arrest him on this.
They found the jawbone. He was gradually taking the pieces out of the stove, the ashes and stuff, and disposing them over the course of a couple of days.
Yeah,
A
absolutely.
lot of them right in his backyard, and that's where they found rings and pieces of her trunk that he said that he put on
Piece
the
of
train
jawbone,
with
yeah,
her.
yeah.
Yeah, I believe the police then took some of them down.
Blood and
Yeah.
then the head of the bed and blood in the
River.
floorboards.
Yeah, we're washing
them off and checking them out.
So anyways, there you have it. Legendarily, one of Ohio's first serial killings. Johnathan Meigs Ward admitted to this. Then he later recanted it and said he didn't do it. But during his confessions, he also admitted to murdering 2 other people.
One in Milan, Ohio.
Yeah, I think one was for like $8. But I think both of them were robbery was the motive.
Right.
Um,
Money.
and he was hung, convicted and hung later that year at the old Lucas County courthouse. And the gallows he was hung.
Wasn't he the first one hung at that courthouse?
Yes.
I thought.
Yeah, I think you're right. I have the date here. I wrote it down.
June 12th,
So, yep,
Yeah.
June.
1850.
He had committed the murder that February 4th, and the same year, 1857, June 12th, he was hung and executed for that crime. I think his body is built in a pauper's grave, is the way I understand it. There was
Yeah, nobody claimed it. The church actually took his remains and buried them
Yeah.
somewhere.
a pauper's grave, an unknown grave, so to speak. So there you have it. This murder, I don't want to sound like I'm sick, it's kind of always intrigued me. And here's where it gets interesting. A friend of Butch and I's, John Kachuba, who writes Haunted Ohio, some of the Haunted, was On the Road Again, from John Kachuba's book about Ohio hauntings, was visiting Jenna's restaurant several years ago, and the owner then told him about Jenna's restaurant was haunted, and all the claims of what was going on there, music from old time music being played, shadow figures, a woman being seen. They even saw a crack on the floor that they thought could have been an old grave. I don't believe there's any truth to that, but there you go. There's a legend, and the owner of Jenna's had said so.
Should we add into that was a residential neighborhood when all this happened, and then I forget when, but that whole block row of houses burnt down.
Yeah, it burned
The
down
fire,
in the late
they broke the
1800s.
business.
So even Return Ward's home was gone. I mean, the buildings were gone from Division Street, which is now Main Street. So the whole west side of it. So that story that John Kachuba had written, it intrigued me. Matter of fact, I always joke because if you're going to read that story in his book, there's also a couple of pages that are dedicated to you and I, the Tilly Ohio Ghost Hunter. So if you do reach out and get John Kachuba's book, somewhere in the middle of the book, it mentions Butch and I in our group. So that's kind of cool as well. And that was like, 6, 7, 8 years. I don't even know how long ago it was. So anyways, that story intrigued me. And I had also read a book, and right here it is, from Galen Yendi, Murder in Sylvania. And if you want to know more about this murder, the serial killing, and all of its gruesome details, this is a great book. It has everything in detail. A lot of the quotes are from the Toledo Blade,
Yes.
and all the articles that were written in.
2 sections of the book. One is strictly newspaper articles, and one is other historical background research.
Court documents are there.
Right,
Yeah.
court documents are there.
But I don't think we should downplay this at all. It's a gruesome story. It's in detail. It's not for everyone. It's just the way that is. So anyways, Jenna's story was told in John Kachuba's book, which sparked an interest in this. And then I read Galen Gindy's book, and I wondered if any, we've all heard of residual hauntings, or the energy that's absorbed in the places that's had tragedies happen or traumatic things happen. Just by chance, we had gotten a call from a lady by the name of Amanda that owned the old Reed building on the corner of Main Street about some alleged hauntings going on. And I had, our group had an opportunity to go in there. And then I remember I told you and Becky, I didn't feel anything when I walked in there. there was a couple of teenage boys, how those claims can go. I wasn't quite sure what we were going to encounter when we got there.
Those boys seemed legitimate.
Oh yeah, I wasn't doubting or questioning that Amanda was truthful and honest, because she was absolutely forthright. She was very honest. But the growling, the throwing of objects, the slamming of doors, and so we took on this investigation. We had set up that night, and lo and behold, that night, you and Uncle Jeff were there, and Butch and I were there. Do you guys remember up in the front studio where Amanda said there was a lot of activity going on? And I can remember while we were doing our first sessions, you got to remember the old Reed building was the old Reed Funeral Home, and it was kind of a neat building. I mean, it had the old loft where they brought the coffins up, and they had the horses stable in there. It was really a cool building. And then, of course, they had the embalming room and the old showroom.
Crematorium underneath, everything.
It was unique, and it kind of a cool building to investigate. I guess we were just happy that it was a cool building to investigate. I remember the REM pod going off during the first session in an empty room towards the front of the building. You would set up a camera in what I was calling the front studio, and I'm not sure what the room was called. And you would set up your camera down in the old embalming room, and we locked that camera in that room in total darkness. Why don't you tell us what happened? We captured our first bit of evidence right off the bat. I think it was like 7 minutes into the investigation. We were REM pod upstairs.
I think we were still upstairs setting up the equipment. We just set that downstairs up, and then we went up, and we were still running equipment.
So what happened on your camera? Do you remember?
Yeah, after I set the camera up, I made sure that all the doors were locked and nobody else was in that area in the embalming room, and locked the door. Went upstairs. We finished setting up there. Next day, I think we went outside to take a little break after we set up before we got the total investigation going. And lo and behold, after analyzing it, not once, but twice, we got a young lady that said hello twice on it.
Right into the camera.
Right into the camera.
First hello was within minutes.
Right.
And we were upstairs setting up.
7 minutes.
Right.
The
7
second
minutes.
one came like, I
After
don't
we
know,
were out.
45 minutes later or something.
Well, you remember shortly right after that, at this particular, it was a big building, and there was only
Yes,
four
there's a lot
of
to
us
cover.
or 5 of us. Jake was with us too, so there might have been 5 of us. So we had our work cut out for us. It was a big building, so we were trying to put eyes and ears in every room that we could, room that we couldn't be in at that time. We had a camera also set up in. You've run tech before. You've run the cameras. You put them on a tripod. You tape the wires. Now, what happened?
Well, I set the camera up in the studio. It was being used as a studio at the time, maybe a photography studio. And I always tape my cords down with duct tape, because not only for safety, but to protect our equipment. You know what I mean? If you snag your foot on a cord and you knock a camera over, that it's a lot of money to replace that. And we don't get paid for doing this. You know what I mean? And we just left the camera running in there, and at one point the camera on its own turned.
Is that the one with the lamp in the shop?
Yep.
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 There was also
There, and it
claims in
was
that
on
room.
the IR camera, and so there was no light leaks, like somebody came in and opened the door. You know what I mean? You'll see shadows, you'll see things happening if somebody's moving around in the room even. You know what I mean? And the camera just turned, and we didn't have any explanation for it. And that cable was taped from the first floor down the hallway, taped all around the corners securely.
Well, what makes that piece of documented evidence come to life, and it makes it somewhat paranormal is there was claims.
Right, it was claims that there was stuff going on in that room.
Things being moved.
Things being moved, the table being pushed out of the way in different areas, and the one boy that was using that as a studio, he says there was stuff going on in that room. So
But one of the other thing was that I remember, it was probably a little better than halfway through the night. Uncle Jeff and I were going out on the coffee run, and I had locked the door downstairs and locked you and Becky up on the second floor in what I was calling the loft area, where the coffin storage area, back in the day. And there was these big, long wooden footsteps or stairways going up the side of the building to the loft. And I think you and Becky were doing an Oculus session.
Right.
And I think, I think, well, why don't you say there's big, heavy footsteps.
And we thought Harold was coming up the stairs. And right at the same time, we were talking, the Oculus, we don't always have a lot of luck with, but sometimes you get direct answers to direct questions. And we got the name when we heard the footsteps, and I was like, what are they doing? Are they coming upstairs? Which they weren't even in the building. And we got Walter, which was the name of
So
the
we got a hit on the Oculus. And everybody knows the Oculus is not always the one piece of equipment to prove or disprove a haunting, but it was kind of cool that it mentioned the name right, and it was answered right when you asked, who is that coming up the stairs? So
Not to mention too, at that same time, I seen a shadow.
yeah, right behind you, and we saw that when you were on the video. So, but lo and behold, the building, I think we all agreed after taking home and doing and analyzing and everything and going over everything with a fine-tooth comb. A couple of weeks later, we all agreed that building had some paranormal activity going on it. And after we had left, the paranormal activity kind of increased. We had went back there a second time and captured some of the same things that we did the first time. And then I think we did a cleansing and blessing of the building. And it seems to go quiet. Since that, Amanda sold the building to another guy, and I won't say his name at this time, but a great guy, and he's done remarkable things with the building. But it kind of blossomed and bloomed and mushroomed from there. We had talked to another guy who's a friend of mine, Larry Duvall from Sylvania Studio, and they had asked us to come in and do their building, that maybe they were having some things going on as well. And I remember we set that investigation up, and we had, I think that night we had an old friend of mine from Haunted Toledo help me that night at Sylvania Studio. About an hour before we arrived, Larry and Scott had said, we almost canceled this investigation tonight. Looks like Dan's got a friend. Crocky, this is Crocky. Crocky likes to be in every show.
The dog's not in it.
Right? Crocky insists, okay? They had a big shelf that had been hanging there for 10 or 15 years, big metal shelf bolted in the wall, come crashing down with all their merchandise. It was about within an hour of us arriving. And Scott had said, well, you guys can go ahead and do the building, but boy, I was almost ready to cancel this investigation. But we looked in Larry's shop and we investigated there. And, I talked to Larry a couple of days later that, I had a lot more questions than answers when it comes to Sylvania Studio. A lot of odd things going on, a lot of abnormalities and light flares and lens flares and just strange things going on. And to this day, I'm not sure if it's haunted or not, but when Scott's shelf comes down, and it's almost like they knew we were coming. Does that make sense? And you and a guy from the other group worked the upstairs, and we left that building. We felt pretty good about that investigation, and then the calls started coming in. They apparently people from Main Street knew we were there, what we were doing, and it's a small community, it's a close community, and the business owners all know each other. By word of mouth, we had gotten a call from Hussein from the Executive Diner.
And that's a fun one to talk about because we were all there together. Do you want to answer any questions before we go any farther?
Sure, if you got one.
Well, somebody's asking about, George Sperling wants to know, it says hello, wondering about our YouTube channel. Do we have all of our best EVP or videos on there? We've got some stuff on there, but we're adding them all the time.
I want to address that.
Yeah.
Because other people were asking me, Harold, you guys have been doing this for 40 years. You're slowly now starting to upload things on YouTube, and I'm really into this whole social thing now. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm enjoying myself. I'm out at Owens Community College now, doing our Ghost Talk presentations, several times a year publicly, and I do enjoy these things. I enjoy this show immensely. Tonight was a little bit difficult because I'm tired. We've been on the run all weekend, and my grandchildren moving. I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm a little bit tired, but I like it. Yes, we've been doing this for 40 years. George, I'm glad you asked this because it is time to talk about these things. Everything that we used to do, we were based on private investigations. This is going to not ghost hunting, George. Big difference between ghost hunting and paranormal investigating. I don't want to get into that tonight. But a lot of our clients were people that were in need. They were afraid. They were scared. They had children that were petrified. Sometimes we would have to bring in the church or outside help to help these families. Hauntings aren't fun, George. In my humble opinion, you should have the right to be happy in your home and comfortable and relaxed, and especially if you have children. Doors are banging and there's growling and people talking, and it's scary. But that's what Toledo Ohio Ghost Hunter Society did. We spent 25 to 30 years going from home to home that we were called into to help people. George, we could never talk about those. Some of the I can remember cases from 20 years ago. I still can't. We've got them recorded on old cassette recorders and stuff. I can't put them on YouTube. I can't. Privacy matters. It's important. I am now. That being said, I'm going back. Like if you look on our Facebook, what I posted last week on Facebook, one of the old, it was just an investigation we did, a fun spot on the east side. Things like that I'm starting to bring out. You got to remember, all my files, and Becky can tell you, I got a file cabinet upstairs, it's full. I never posted any of those pictures. I never posted any of those EVPs or videos.
But there are a lot of EVPs we can and are starting to pull out. That don't
the bottom line is,
background of
here's
where they are, or
George, here's the promise to you. Give me to the end of the week, and I'll bring out another old investigation, somewhere like Fun Spot or somewhere public, and I'll bring it out of our files, and I'll make it public for you to enjoy some of the things that we captured. And I said this year, I'm writing a book, and I don't want to be rushed. I'll come out with the book when I'm ready. I'm enjoying the process, and this is just playing a big role in this book.
On YouTube is funny because it's a medium where, like, if what you put out isn't entertaining, who wants to watch just a recording of a
little
voice?
bit.
You have to put a little something with it, and if you don't,
What was our conversation the other day? I am such an amateur, such a rookie when it comes to. George, let me make better sense of it. I'm in doing an investigation. At the Mohican Haunted Castle, for instance, a couple of days ago. It's so different when I'm investigating there and Jeff's standing there running the camera and we got to do another take or a double take, or Becky's interviewing a client. It's a different world than when I'm at 1:30 in the morning in a client's attic where a little child is speaking and the people are petrified. And I'm trying to find out, is it haunted? If it is, why is it haunted? And better yet, what am I going to do about it if I capture and document something? I got to find a way to get rid of it. There's no money involved here. You don't make a penny. But the last thing that our client wants us to do is come out on Facebook tomorrow and say, guess what? We documented some paranormal activity, and here's the client, and here's their name, and here's where they live, and this is what was captured.
We got one more quick question.
Good. Anyways, George, I hope that answered your question. And I promise you, I'm pulling things out of the closets now, and I'll begin to post them. I think I'm going to post some Athens stuff. If you ever heard of Athens at one time was the 13th most haunted place in the United States. You and I have been down to Athens dozens of times. We investigated so many places that nobody else has ever been able to get into, including the TB ward, the old Beacon building, children's hospital for the mentally ill.
Which is gone now.
Right. And we can bring it. We'll bring it in. And I will bring those up out of the files and share them with you. Anyways, thanks, George. Go ahead.
James is asking, we were talking about we were getting activity in downtown Sylvania.
I want to get back to the Sylvania stuff.
Yeah,
too.
we are going to. This is going to be quick. I can answer this one. How do you determine whether an entity is hostile or friendly? Do you take any precautions? What we do is
Get out.
in closing prayers. And I guess if it's not like scratching at you or biting you or something, then it's not hostile, right, Jamie? Now, how do we determine? I mean, by the past history of what has happened at the location.
You know what, though?
If are people
Can I chime in
getting
and then you chime in?
negative
But
things
here's the
happening
thing.
to them, then
This might answer for James. Everything is energy, and I don't want to get into big scientific. This is not Ghost Hunting 101. You have positive energy that runs higher and faster. You have lower energy, negative energy that runs lower and slower. Usually, when you're doing EVP sessions, most people like Carmen, Michelle, can feel the different scales of the energy. More importantly, when you're picking up an EVP, here's the old school thing to make you see if I clarify it. We get a lot of calls where people think that it's a demon. There's something very demonic in the house. And when we get in there, it's nothing more than that low, negative, slow energy of a bully in life that's now crossed over, that's a bully in death, and they are trying to scare you by growling, pinching, pulling, pushing, and saying nasty things on an EVP, and that is aggressive and that is negative. We've also encountered where someone just simply says hello, says hi, and wants to be recognized. And that would be that positive. And you can measure these things.
That says it's mom.
Yeah, but you can measure these things on the scale. That happened to us at Toledo Beach, where we were talking, and she said, "Hi, it's mom," and she wanted the client to hear that. But somehow, when you're putting these in download, they're just higher, faster frequency energies, and those are usually good energies. I've always said, if you're a good person in life, that's probably what you are in the afterlife. If you are a nasty, bully, negative energy in life, that's probably what you are in the afterlife. And energy runs that way. And our equipment can pick that up and capture it. But more importantly, I think we all just know it from doing it for so many years. You had something to say. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, one time I went on an investigation. It was like a seemingly innocent building. And some of the scariest stuff I ever saw.
Hollywood's Arts, I know what you're talking about.
No, it wasn't even there. That's a different one. It was an innocent place, and someone got scratched twice, and we got growls and all kinds of crazy stuff. So it is hard to tell what's going to be nasty and what's not.
Yeah, George is also asking, I understand you can't show anything because of privacy, so what's everybody's education on the paranormal, and what is your experience in exorcisms at people's homes? We don't do exorcisms, George. We're not Catholic.
So let me jump on this, George. That's a second great question. I think you learn as you go, and I don't want to downplay this at all. I had an interest in the paranormal from the time I was 7 or 8, when I was beginning to experience things myself. By the time I was 12, my fear was turning into a need for knowledge. Some people are born with the gift. I'm not. I'm a documenter, not a psychic, a medium. I knew I was being terrified. I wanted to learn as much as I could because I knew I could help people. I knew other people were going through the same thing that I was going through. They weren't crazy. They weren't insane. Paranormal exists. I knew it in my heart because I was seeing and witnessing it myself. I started going, and I don't want to throw out a bunch of names, but there was a wonderful lady. Her name was Lady Circe down on Parkwood. I went there. I don't even want to get into that. I would stop by and visit her a lot. They were great teachers, and some of them were Wiccan, some of them pagan. I don't need to get into that. But I learned a lot under her, and in just honing my skills over the year. Dr. Ken out of Columbus, Ohio, parapsychologist. I learned a great deal from him. Listen, I'm not a professional. There's not one professional sitting at this table. We're just a bunch of people that think and feel deeply that we can help other people that may be experiencing the paranormal. None of us are labeled a professional by any means. We've been blessed to be able to instruct a fun class at Owens Community College on the paranormal. I think we have years of experience just doing the right thing as many times as you can, because bad things are going to happen and mistakes are going to be made. I think if you keep an open heart, try to do the best you can, the knowledge will come, the years of experience will do it. You said something about an exorcism. You got to remember, George, I'm Catholic. My mom was Roman Catholic. I was an altar boy till I was 14 years old. When I graduated from catechism, or high school, I graduated from catechism. My mother insisted. In my belief system, the only one that could perform an exorcism, what is commonly known as an exorcism, would be somebody that was handpicked by the Catholic diocese from the bishop. And they were trained that way. I believe that the way I understand it, there's 5 of them in the United States. That's all they do. Carmen can do house blessings and cleansings. Michelle does house cleansings and blessings. They believe in what they do. I think they do it with an open heart and pure energies. But I don't think any of us can sit here and say, I am a professional parapsychologist. I mean, even if there was a such thing, how do you get that title? I don't know.
No, you read, you study, you work with equipment, you experience and a desire to learn.
But I want to get on with Sylvania.
Yeah, let's go.
But George, let me say one last thing. I learned something many years ago in Bayview, Ohio, from a shaman when I had stood out in line in front of his teepee for 2 hours with my hands loaded of all the things I needed him to bless to help me do my work. I went into his tent and he told me to set everything down. He scolded me, set me out in the backfield behind his teepee, and he told me, don't come back in until the grass had talked to me. And then, of course, he gave me my Native American name at that time, and it was Listening Oak. So I didn't listen well, apparently. I wanted like bear or, wolf or something. It was like Listening Oak. He had said something that my mother always said to me. My mother always believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. He said, we were made in God's liking. He said, listen, you stand in line, you think your stuff is going to work because I'm going to bless it. I want you, when I come back in, he gave me a handful of all his stuff and sent me back out to the grass field and do a blessing of all of his stuff. And he even joked, he said, well, now I'm going to double on price because it's now blessed by the founder of the Tualatin Ghost Hunters Society, Harold St. John himself. The bottom line is if you believe it in your heart, it becomes somewhat the truth if you do good. I hope that answers your question. George, message me anytime. I would love, and call the office. I would love to get into a conversation with you. We don't do exorcisms. We do house blessings and cleansings. We do have some contacts with the church if we need to. But hauntings, demonic hauntings are so very rare, you probably won't see one in your whole lifetime unless you're looking for it and you're practicing Satanism and you're worshiping that entity. I don't think we're worthy of him, if that makes any sense. I don't think he's going to waste his time with us. So, okay. Anyways, I'm going to get back to Sylvania.
The restaurant.
There we go.
all work together.
So-
There was a lot of crazy stuff
yeah,
going on that night.
We left Sylvania's studio, and we met Hussein from the executive diner. And this was really an amazing place. We went there the first time for the first investigation. We had a little bit of activity. We all thought maybe we heard a girl's voice in the back, but then Hussein's family had come in a few minutes later, so we kind of had to discount that. But there was some bumps, things here. There were some noises down the basement, and I don't want to say somebody else's name in case they get upset with me, but I just will. A friend of mine from Haunted Toledo was with me that night, filming down the basement. He had debunked the noises that we were hearing as the freezer noises or the ice maker.
No, I mean the night.
I'm going up telling them.
Okay.
So this is the first time. So we went there the first time, and a lot of things that we did were debunked. I had gotten a call a couple of weeks later that the activity there had increased. So then we had gotten to go back. So this is, and that night, Jeff, you were with us. Your boy came out and run the camera. Carmen, Dan, I think you were both there with us that night as well. Well, things were different that night. We had set up a laser grid once again going down the hallway. We had some activity. Why don't we just, the executive diner isn't haunted. Go to our YouTube channel. You have a video on there.
Yeah, it's not the full video, but it's some snippets of it.
Right. It gives some nice shots from the executive diner. Here, before they even tell their story, is the executive diner haunted? Absolutely every day of the week. What was your experience of the executive diner?
Well, again,
Besides you laying on the floor filming up the stairs and I captured you doing.
well, down in the basement, we caught that. It's not an orb. There's that little beam of light that shoots across the floor in a perfectly straight line. Never figured out what that was. But who was it? It was Carmen, Becky, and myself. We were upstairs in the dining area. And going back to the YouTube channel, it shows the door slamming. We were doing an EVP session in there. And we had the guy that works there with us in the room with us, and that door just slammed shut on its own. He said, I've never seen that door slam in the 2 years I've been working here. Well, as we went back on the evidence, looking back at it later, we had a stationary camera sitting like at the end of the bar here, filming this long hallway when the door slammed shut. As soon as it slammed shut, I got up to relax the door. I couldn't figure out how it closed. There was no air currents, nothing, perfectly still in there. It just slammed hard.
Well, the thing right before that is Jeff had a really good camera on that doorway at the time. Oh, no, I'm sorry.
No, that was the DVR.
Yeah,
that was downstairs.
No, the DVR camera that
Oh,
we had
yeah.
at the back. It had a weird camera glitch that it's never done before. And that was, 20 seconds before
It was about 2 minutes.
the door closed. I
2
remember that.
minutes, the camera is a digital, kind of like when the reception of your TV starts going out, this weird digital flare. No big deal, but it's coincidental. There was that. And then a minute later, Right before the door closes, you sit down at the end of the hall, you see this little shadow. It's like a 3-second clip. It's not in the YouTube video, but we have it on our video evidence. Little 3-second clip. You see a shadow at the end of the hall. Second, it turns and it's a full silhouette, a dark figure, and it has like a white anomaly for a head and a perfect silhouette. Then the third second, it turns and disappears like through the opposite wall.
So somewhat of a full bodied apparition. I think you and I, as we talked, we kind of agreed that it could even be that of a woman, which was one of the reports that was being haunted by a woman.
And it's way down at the end of the hall. It's real small. It'd be nice if we could find a way to enlarge that,
Sure.
like an
Now,
extra look at it.
something happened to you as well.
And then a minute later, the door slammed shut right after that.
You were filming downstairs. Did the door something?
Right, I was down near the freezer, and I had my camera set up, looking into this other part of this room because we ran out of cameras upstairs and whatever, and I had the millimeter in my hand, and this thing was going nuts. It was going up to 1700 degrees, this and ever, and I walked into the other room to see what was going on with that, and it still was going nuts, and I walked in there, started coming back, and I didn't hear her say. She says, "That door."
Carmen's the one that saw him.
And she said, "That door just moved behind you." And I kept going, and luckily he was filming behind me, and he caught it, and my camera caught it, and the door just moved right on behind me.
Yeah, it is funny. You kept what experience did you have at these days? Did you have any experiences?
Yeah, the cinnamon rolls were a constant theme the whole night.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
the
But there was talk that we set up one of the tripods with the camera in a particular location. When we came back down later, the bag of cinnamon rolls was sitting underneath the tripod. Like we would have to set the tripod right on top of the cinnamon rolls. Whether it happened or not, we're not going to call that paranormal. I'm not sure if you had anything else, but
Butch and I heard piano music
that's right. I remember
Yeah.
that.
down in the basement. We were
And
only
one-
down
and
there
one
for
of the
like 2
reports-
minutes.
And one of the reports was music from the late 1800s, early 1900s.
Yeah, it sounded like
The
saloon
music they
music.
played, yeah.
There was about 4 or 5 reports of music, even at Jenna's, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Which is now the executive dining.
employees of executive dining.
Yeah.
It was always in the basement too, wasn't
Sure.
it?
Well, there was always reports of the channel fear, objects moving off the bar, because I remember them saying that in the interview. What did you experience? Did either one of you have experience?
I ran
Just
around
the
and
door closing when we were sitting upstairs.
I didn't even experience
And
that. I think
What about, didn't your son, do you have any experience?
something I think he saw on the monitor system. I think the door closing and
No, that's what it was. We were downstairs in the basement. Harold was outside on the main street taking exterior pictures of the building,
I was working.
and we were all in the basement. Jeff, your son, was upstairs at the tech table, sitting silent, watching everything, and we thought we heard Harold walking around upstairs loud.
that's right.
There
So
was a lot of noise.
I went upstairs to ask your son, are you walking around up here? No, I've been sitting at the table. Where's Harold? Oh, he's outside.
Yeah.
Those were loud footsteps.
Well, lo and behold, we had sat down with Hussein and Preston as well, and they had, shared with us some of the claims of paranormal activity. And one by one, right down the list, we were capturing and documenting some of the same paranormal activity that had been reported to us to a T. It was strange. The woman figure, the music would be one, the doors opening and closing. I don't think we captured any objects moving, but I guess a door closing would be an object moving as well.
Bathroom flooded.
Yeah. So and it was to the point that if you watch these on YouTube, Preston at one time was so afraid he left the building. So sometimes it's not even all that funny, even if you're used to a pair. So we got the executive diner done it on a couple occasions, and that we believe is haunted. But here's the thing: the biggest claim that was made from that location was that is where Olive Ward was either A, buried, or B, that's where she was murdered. Sitting with Galen Indian, meeting her and becoming friends with her over the last couple of years, and reading her book.
And shadow figures were reported in the dining area.
That whole story was then put into question, and by me for one, the main thing I wanted to know is where did the murder happen? And just by chance, through investigating down the line, we had one of the last buildings we did was Rivet, but I want to talk about this building first. I got to meet a great friend of mine. him and I have become very good friends. I think he's a great guy. Brian Yeager from Ace Hardware, he's the manager at Ace Hardware. If you're ever in Sylvania and you need something from the hardware store, he's the guy, he's a go-to guy. The guy knows everything. He can help you with anything you want. But a real friendly guy, you and I made instant friends with him.
Yep.
Invited us into his location, sat down with us. And by then, this thing was getting big. So we had Outcast help us on a couple of these investigations. At the beginning, Chris Tillman from Johnathan had given me a hand on some of these as well. It was a story that I wanted to see from the beginning to the end. And I knew it was going to take some time. I was thinking at the time this could be a year. As it turned out, it's been a couple of years. It's a process, and you don't want to talk about everything. You only want to talk about the things that the client, allows you to talk about or is comfortable with you coming out. There's some privacy issues here, things that should be kept personal. So Brian invites us in to Ace Hardware, and on our first trip there, once again, Michelle had said she heard, some talking and you heard Jake in the back of the store, maybe some things moving around in the shelves, down the aisles in the front of the store, and a bunch of. Once again, they had more questions than answers, and this just happens. We have a passion for what we do, but sometimes you walk out of a location after a 5 or 6 hour investigation with more questions than you do the answers. And that night was just like that. I can remember the very next day calling Brian and saying, Brian, we just didn't have enough time. This isn't going to resolve or answer any of the questions that I personally even had. Would you allow us to come back in here? The funny thing is we have been in Ace Hardware now 3 or 4 times. That's what it's taken to get the whole story. Sitting with Galen and some of the other people in Sylvania, learning more about the exact location of the murder, which is still kind of in question. But that being said, in Galen Gindy's book, they pinpointed it to where Ace Hardware now sits. And you can check the history of the old bowling alley, and it was a Lane's drugstore. Well, their locations in front of the building changed a bit, so it was shifting and was causing me some confusion. I wanted to know where Olive Ward was murdered by Return Ward.
And in turn, we all wanted to know, were any of these hauntings connected?
Yeah.
Were they one entity that was just wandering through downtown Sylvania?
Well,
Were there, it's an old city.
Well, I kind of wondered too, is at that time, because that was a residential area, all the houses burned down, how many people were killed in all those fires?
Actually, there supposedly were not anybody,
Oh, really?
anyone was
Well,
killed in those fires.
isn't it funny?
But their businesses were, in those days, behind the houses. Like there was a little alley between the house and the business.
Isn't it funny that sometimes, it just takes a while to do the research. It takes a while to get the history. You have to get to know the public. You got to start talking to people. Everybody
And
else
it
has
takes a while to get everybody's permission
Sure,
to
sure.
talk
To
about
get everybody lined up. So, anyways,
Longer to go through the evidence.
right?
it.
We had got to return back to Ace Hardware after being there several times, but this last time was done really well. I had reached out to Dan and Carmen were with us that night as well, and I reached out to you, and I think it was Melissa from your group, and Ryan and Melissa also helped us. Nicole at Rebay as well next door.
Steve was at Rebay as well.
Yeah, so we hit Ace Hardware pretty hard, and here's the thing: even us as all, I don't want to say professionals, but as seasoned investigators, to this day we've been out of there 6 weeks, and we're still questioning the things that we heard. Could this be contamination? Paint cans were banging down the shelves. Were they expanding? And some people say, yeah, they can. Some people say, no, they can't. It's climate control. The store is always at 78 degrees. There'd be no reason for that. But we got some out bangs. Some EVP sessions were being done where some of our members, I think including you, we were standing at the exact location, the exact spot where Galen Gindy wrote in their book, Murder in Sylvania, the very exact location of the murder of Olive Ward. And lo and behold, I think Melissa's one, and then some of our own members swear when we were doing an EVP session, addressing Olive Ward and asking her by name, it says Olive.
Well, there's a spirit box
That would be
thing
one.
as well that says Olive, and Melissa has, and we still all need to review it, but like 7 pages of things that she has heard that we need to look at. So, I mean, it was what, a 3-hour
Well,
investigation?
yeah, oh, yeah.
Short, so,
And here's the thing, you had an encounter, you were standing there and I get you on camera, you're going like this, and as if
Yep.
somebody's bothering you.
Right.
What was going on?
I still to this day, I really don't know, because I kept looking back and there was nothing there. There was no spider webs. There were nothing dangling down from the ceiling.
You felt like you were being, I wasn't at that investigation. I was at the first one.
Right. What did you
Did you
think?
feel like something was touching you?
Yeah,
Yeah. What did you think of Ace Hardware?
I personally didn't really pick anything up, or the only piece of evidence that Carmen and I's equipment caught was when you had her, when we were all doing the EVP session in the paint section. You sent Carmen the other side of the store just by herself to look
And
around.
I want you to say something about that.
And on her audio recorder, it sound we all remember when the fan for the whole building kicked on because it was pretty loud. And then there was a paint mixer or something that kicked
Yeah.
in. But in between that, she was walking on the aisleways by herself. It's a fairly big sized store. We were in one corner, Carmen was all the way in the opposite end, and it sounds like a half yell, half scream through her audio recorder, which is.
You know what it said?
No, it's just more like a. Gosh, I don't know.
What was your take on Ace Hardware? I mean, obviously, it was kind of cool being there, but did you have any feelings? What do you think?
It was, I don't know, it was a different feeling.
Wasn't it weird when you're doing an EVP session and and Jeff had captured me on video camera? Sometimes I wish he would have, but I began my EVP session. You and Butch was standing next to me, and you and Dan were right over here on me, and Jeff was over here filming. I wanted to open up. By this time, 2 years went by. I had so much to say to return. I didn't realize I had all this pent up, built up anger in him, and I began to do my own EVP session. And they always say before you do an EVP session, open up your mind, clear your mind, open up your heart, and be one with where you're at. And I was so angry at him that return, if you're here, I want you. You're a son of a bitch, return. And that I don't think I had a very good session because I immediately went on the attack at him. So I left, which everybody always jokes that I leave for a while, but I was struggling with all of my equipment and.
Before you left though, and you were talking about him being hung, I couldn't breathe.
Right, I remember you
well,
saying
that was the problem you had.
yeah,
And you start, yeah. 'cause
and then
we
when I
both went
started
outside.
but it made me because I was attacking him. Maybe he was attacking me. It was really it was a real strange investigation where he's hearing what sounds like a yell. He feels like he's being messed with. Michelle is hearing things move and make noise. You're having trouble breathing. I'm angry, which I try not to get angry too much. And then Melissa from Jeff was getting all kinds of things going over her record. So, here's the beauty of it. Is Main Street haunted by Olive Ward, who was murdered by her husband, returned Johnathan Meigs Ward? As Galen Giddy says, I return to Sylvania all the time. I stopped down and, and I should have said I want to thanks for Reveille too, and thank your group for coming out to Reveille as well. We did the Reveille salon. The Sylvania's coming to a close now. I don't know how many more trips we're going to be out there. We've made some great friends, some lifelong friends in this. And this was all brought up for 2 reasons, from John Kachuba's book, Galen Gindy's book, and our first phone call to look at the old rebuilding, which blossomed into so much more, and it's taken 2 years. Every time I walk downtown Sylvania and I see somebody and I look at her, could that be Olive? I know it sounds really crazy, you guys. I think back as I'm walking down and you can see all the wonderful businesses. We stopped and we get something to eat at the Executive Diner now. And Preston and Singer, great people. But I look down the street and I wander. I try to think back in time to what it was like. And then I come into I hope Main Street's not haunted by Olive Ward. I pray that it's not. I hope that somehow she's found peace. She died a horrible death, being murdered that way. And I mean, some say, well, Return paid the ultimate price, being hung on the gallows at the old courthouse.
No, she paid the ultimate price,
Yeah.
and he just got what he
Well, isn't it
deserved.
funny when
Right.
this story gets brought up, even all of us, it's just the strange thing is we don't even all agree on the investigations we did. We don't all agree on what might be paranormal, what's not. We're all hearing something a little bit different. And I think it's because we've all been so profoundly affected by
It's
this.
just a weird coincidence that we do have the audio track there where the voice says Olive and it's clear.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
And
Yeah.
Ryan Ossenbach was talking about caught the anomaly on the SLS. Was that an ace?
No, that was at Rovay.
That was her
Yeah,
bad.
but-
I was leaning on that,
The chair.
on the massage
You
chair.
know,
or
here's the
whatever,
funny thing.
And the thing was actually right underneath me.
Here's the funny thing. We, in a last minute deal, you want to hear talk about, and we laugh about this. Here's my chance. I wasn't sure we were going to get into Reveille.
Yeah, you and I went.
Because I'm not pushy. I just, I'm not, if you want our help, we'll do it. If you're not interested, then you won't hear from me again. But we were over at Chandler's Cafe one morning, you and I was having a cup of coffee. And I was there a couple of days before, walking down Sylvania, just kind of reminiscing what it might be like in, 1857. And somebody bought me a cup of coffee. So I stopped this really nice Jim. Greg was his name, wasn't it? I bought him, yeah, from I didn't even know him from Adam.
Yeah,
Yeah. I went back. He was one of the managers there, and I bought him a cup of coffee and asked him, "Hey, do you come here? You live here in Sylvania?" He goes, "No, I live in Toledo." I said, "Boy, you come a long way for a cup of coffee." He asked me where I live. I said, "Temperance Pinch." He goes, "You come even further, don't you?" And then he said, "No, I work downtown." I said, "Oh, that's kind of cool. Where do you work?" And he went, "Oh, right across the street, Reveille." What a nice guy. And I wasn't even gonna. You're the one that said, "Hey, why don't you reach out to Reveille one more time?" Jeff, I'm exhausted with this. I'm so used to doing private investigations. This was bigger than me, and I've been consumed. And you could tell doing my EVP sessions at Ace Hardware, I'd become angry. I think Return Ward was affecting me. I think to this day he still affects me. In my sorrow and sadness for Olive, and I have the biggest question: where are her children at? What happened to them? We may never know the truth.
They went to live with their father.
Yeah, Galen Giddy did a great job in the book. Jack and Ju wrote a good story about this. We may never know this actual murder and the probable paranormal residual activity that's caused by it. We may never know exactly what's going on, what the truth is, and what the entire story is. But I want to close with Reveille. We got to go in there at the tail end of this thing, and what a blessing! Just by meeting the guy. I'd asked you, and
I was at a baseball game. I couldn't go.
Yeah.
So I sent my team.
yeah, so
I was
we had
working.
we had Ryan and Nicole that night, correct?
Steve.
And Steve came out. What a great time to.
Yeah, they had a blast.
We had a blast investigating with him. Ryan brings out his SLS camera. Nicole is the Ryan, and I think the world of Steve and Ryan. Ryan's a nice guy. I had a problem with an automobile. Ryan was getting ready to leave town to go to the races or somewhere up to MIA. He said, "Hey, bring it in. If I can't take care of it, Steve will." What a great guy. He come out run the SLS, and I like that. I think he's gonna try to make me one. And they had captured an abnormality on the SLS. And as we all know, the SLS can, it's still one of those scientific things that we're all working on and we're studying. And you had did some debunking on it.
We found another flaw this weekend with it as well. Same type situation. It does not like round lamps.
Here's the thing. Murder in Sylvania, a great book by Galen Giddy. I want you to read it. John Kachuba's got a story of what is now the Executive Diner. Togue's Toledo Alcohol Society, to my knowledge, was the very first people to ever investigate the exact location where the murder of Olive Ward took place in a lot of the surrounding buildings. I've had the pleasure of working with Outcast Paranormal, Ryan and Steve and Nicole and Melissa. During this whole process of working together, we made the decision that you guys were going to become a part of the Togues family. Butch and I got to spend a lot more time arguing, and we decided what's paranormal and not. And Becky got more time to say, "Where are you going now?" and not being able to go because she had to work. I got to work with Chris Tillman from Haunted Toledo back in the day, and So we got a lot of people involved in this. You are now going to come out, I think, with about a 30-minute documentary, make a movie of this thing.
I mean, the plan is episodes.
Can we have it ready for people for Christmas gifts or no?
I'm open to, but we've got lots of interviews to do. So
And you guys have a lot of your own investigations
Yeah,
going on. You
yeah.
guys
I'm
are
just
busy
teasing
right
Jeff.
now.
Jeff got
Jeff knows better than that.
the haunted hydra we hit up, and we're
Well,
gonna.
you
go
guys have
there
been really
before we-
busy.
That would be
It's
I
such
am
a
working that
cool
night.
place.
I am always working when we do the coolest stuff. I hate that, but Harold is going
Okay.
and some other members are
Yeah.
going, I believe.
Make sure you get that thing at the end of the hallway in there.
Which one?
Before the door closes, slam.
Is there any more questions?
Yeah,
I'm going to get wrapping the show, but here's the other thing. I want to thank Outcast Paranormal,
Jeff.
Jeff and Brian and Nicole and Steve, Melissa, Chris Tillman from Haunted Toledo, and everybody else that's worked hard, Carmen and Dan and Michelle and Butch and Uncle Jeff and Jake and everybody. This was something I wanted to do a couple of years ago, and you guys have all given up your time freely to help me. And here's the thing. I didn't want to do this show and give away a lot of the locations yet. It's going to happen. There's going to be a DVD. Jeff is going to make a DVD on this thing and a documentary after some more interviews are done. And we're going to make it public for you guys to see. The last thing I wanted to happen, I've heard from Brian and a couple of our other clients, the phones are ringing off the hook now from every paranormal society in Northwest Ohio. I didn't mean for that to happen. That's not what this was about. Although I understand that, we don't exclusively own the rights to anything. Our clients do. It's their business, for good, bad, or indifferent. And some of these people are really good people and open their doors to all of us. As the public goes out there and begins to knock on the doors, remember what I'm saying. I think the world of these people. They're friendly. It's downtown Sylvania. It's close knit. Everybody knows everybody. Be kind, be courteous with these people. When you're there, you can tell them I said hello. Whether they allow you in or whether they don't, it has nothing to do with me. I wish you the best of luck, but it's not going to be easy, guys. You're going to be there a while if you want to try to do it right. There are other groups out there right now, and some of the businesses said yes to. You guys have my blessings. I hope that you can make a good story of it, and maybe someday as other people pick up this, we can swap some notes and maybe help each other out on these things. But I think we've had the time of our lives. Do you not agree?
Oh, yes.
And here we go. We'll come out with this hopefully sometime, maybe Halloween time, or we're gonna keep putting some things out. So
Yeah,
anybody else?
include in
Anybody else?
installments.
What?
Yeah, I
But
want
it's
to
gotta
say,
be right.
Go
go ahead.
No, I just, that it will come out when it's right.
You're
Right,
perfection.
it's gotta be right.
It's gotta be
It's gotta look good and it's gotta look scary,
Well,
but
here's
it's
the
gotta be
thing.
real.
If Jeff does an interview,
Uh,
if Jeff does a 3-minute interview, it takes about 3 hours to do. It's great, but it's always listen. I filmed you, and I was doing interviews watching you do interviews and filming you. I did 6 hours, and I didn't get 6 seconds of anything I could use. So apparently Jeff's right.
Not because the interviews were not
Right.
amazing.
Apparently I have no idea what I'm doing.
Apparently, we need a better
Hey, listen,
system.
you guys need a cameraman. Count on me, all right?
Okay, listen, I want to say hi to Laura Lee Taylor. I haven't seen you watching our show before. Thanks for joining in. And Shelly Smothers, as always, you're
Shelley!
a fan. We love you and miss you. I have another question from James, but also Arizona Tramp, thanks for tuning in. I know it was a long show.
Tramp,
today.
Winnie the Pooh. Winnie the Pooh.
There was also, as the show was going on, there was a little more discussion about exorcism and with Tom Priest. And James had another question about exorcisms, wanting to know now I'm curious about this too, because I don't really know that much about
Go ahead.
exorcisms or exorcists. Is it an exorcism specifically for a possessed individual or for removing evil spirits in general?
Evil spirits in general or the person. I've seen.
And hi, Aaron Dropla. I love you. Love you, love you, love you.
Who?
I hope you're doing good. Aaron Dropla from Cleveland, Georgia.
Oh, that's
Aaron.
That's Ruth's daughter, right?
Yeah.
Hi, Aaron. How are you? Anyways,
Hi,
to answer
Tyler.
that question, yes, they can do people who?
Tala.
Tyler, who's that?
She's
Why is it that all you guys got fans and I got nobody out there?
and Hops
Hey, are any of my
Paranormal
brothers-
is tuning in.
Is my-
Hops, which is Holland, Ohio Paranormal Group.
Did you say anything to them?
I
or no?
really want
Not
to
yet.
work with you guys, meet you guys. I miss everything that everybody's
I
doing.
miss everything too.
And I want
Really,
to
I have
go
no
that
friends
way
either.
too.
Anyways, to answer the question, yes. Exorcisms can be, and here's the thing you gotta remember. Exorcisms are what they call from the Catholic diocese. There's many different religions, Tibetan, Buddhism, and so on and so forth. They do exorcism-like rituals. They're just probably not called an exorcism.
Right.
But are people capable of performing a like exorcism? I think so. I think it takes years of study. I think they dedicate their lives to that. I'm not going to come flying off the cuff and say, yes, I can perform an exorcism. I'm not worthy of that.
A demon isn't a ghost.
Right.
We are paranormal investigators. We are not demonologists here, and that's a whole different ballgame.
I would reach out to somebody very high ranking. Me personally, I'm Catholic, so I would reach out to the Catholic diocese, the Catholic Church. But depending on your religion and your belief system, some believe, like Shaman believe that they can do it as well. It's Native American. Maybe they can.
Even the Catholic churches, Larry, to even get there and say.
I know, I don't ever want to do it.
Psychologists.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. Some say it's pain in the ass, so to speak. But you got to rule out all these things to get to the nuts and bolts of it. I mean, possession. There's 5 stages. Infestation, manifestation. I don't want to get into all the stages of that. The final thing, possession. It's there in a nutshell to kill you, to break you down, to create havoc and damage. It's not an entity. It's not Uncle Charlie. It was never a living human being, and it's there for one purpose. And it's very, very rare. I promise you, unless you're practicing and trying to get the devil into your home, it's probably not going to happen. If it does, or you're witnessing it, go, whatever your belief system is, go to the top. Don't come to a person like me and no offense, because you and Michelle are capable of doing wonderful things. And I've seen Michelle clean houses where I've had headphones on, and these entities are screaming at me on their way out, absolutely screaming at me. So it can work. I'm just saying, worst case scenario, if you believe that there's demonic activity going on in your house, go to the top. Get some help. We have any other questions?
No. Jennifer from Hops said she'd love to work with Tobes and Outcast Paranormal sometime. I would really look
I know
forward
we're
to that
definitely
too.
gonna.
Yeah, and they are going to be at the Haunted.
Yeah.
We're trying to keep the number to like 10 to 12, and I think we have a couple spots. So
Becky, there, Becky. Now I'm not invited anymore. They just took my spot, right? But I want to thank
We'll be
you all for
working
that.
together sooner than you think because I'm about to get
Yeah,
Yeah, I wanna-
that message was coming tomorrow. So.
You get a message from.
All right, we're gonna sign off. Thanks for joining us tonight. If we went a little long, I apologize, but
Yeah,
some of these people they just never stop talking.
cannot ever stop talking.
Have a great week. Stay safe. We're gonna come back in a couple of weeks with another ghost talk. I think the season's starting. Summer. We're all midway through summer, so we'll let a couple of weeks go by and join us now on our YouTube. Check out some of our videos of things that we're doing. We're going to be posting some stuff from Mohican in the next couple of days. I'll share some pictures from our road trip and things of that nature. So thanks for joining us tonight. Stay in touch. Happy hauntings.
Happy hauntings.
Happy hauntings.
It doesn't seem right.